To discuss more on trade and the president's trip to Asia is political analyst and author of The Great American Political Trivia Challenge. That's Rich Rubino. Rich, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, President Trump has several goals during this trip to Asia. That, of course, includes shoring up investments from Japan and then talking trade with China. We know that's a major discussion as it impacts particularly American farmers, which we've covered extensively. I wonder whether or not Americans are really paying attention to the outcome of these international trips that the president makes. And then if they are paying attention and if it is successful, how much of an impact might it have on the president's approval ratings back here at home?
Yeah, it's a great question. Usually foreign trips are secondary or tertiary to domestic, what the president is doing domestically, unless there is some sort of a major war. So generally speaking, for example, when President Carter negotiated an agreement between Egypt and Israel, it was a huge agreement in terms of the contours of the Middle East, yet his job approval rating only increased by 1%. I think generally speaking, as James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. And I think that generally speaking, Americans look more to what the president is doing economically, unless there is a major war or there is a major scandal. But usually, this does not garner as much kind of support when the president does something positive as you might think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, domestically, the big topic is day 25 of the government shutdown. And, a lot of folks are potentially criticizing the president for making this trip altogether, saying, maybe he should have stayed home. I believe you told me that President Obama did something similar to that when there was a shutdown during his time in the White House. So is that sort of criticism fair? Should he have stayed home at this time to try to seek a deal with Democrats?
Again, that's a great question. I think that from a political standpoint, he's giving an arrow in the political quiver to the Democrats. Chuck Schumer can use this as a cudgel over President Trump. He can say, "We're here to negotiate. Why isn't President Trump here negotiating with us? He should be negotiating 24/7. Yet he's on a foreign trip." He's had criticism of presidents in the past for going on foreign trips. For example, President Johnson in 1966 went on a trip to Asia, actually, and Richard Nixon, the former vice president, basically said that he's so unpopular in America that he has to go outside and campaign in other countries, to which President Johnson called him a chronic campaigner. But I think that President Trump is going to take some criticism for this. That's why I think the impetus for President Trump is to come back with some sort of a trade deal with China. They can go back and say, "This is why I was traveling. Right. This is what I was trying to accomplish." But obviously, he's giving the Democrats some ammunition here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what gets done in China could have major impact for Americans. Yes. I'm thinking specifically the farmers out there. Soybeans has been a story that I've covered in particular here at NewsNation. I know that a lot of soybean farmers are really worried right now. We know that that's going to be an agenda item between him and the Chinese president. So what exactly do you think is the negotiating tactic that President Trump might use here? Because it seems as if the deal has already been done with Argentina, I believe, in terms of purchasing soybeans. So how does Trump really approach this conversation? And what do you think the soybean farmers of America are looking for President Trump to do here?
I think he's basically going to say something to the effect of, we can potentially put another 100% tariff. This is going to hurt you. This is going to hurt you. This potentially could even hurt us. That's why we need some sort of reciprocal trade agreement here. I think when it comes specifically to the soybean farmers, they're a constituency that's generally pretty conservative. But I think that, obviously when it comes to livelihood, they can potentially vote Democratic. So I think to that respect, I think that the president has some worry here, but I think that potentially it's something he could bring up, but he has to make it so that this is a deal, and this is where Donald Trump, when he talks about the art of the deal, an agreement that's basically a win-win proposition for both sides, for both the Chinese and for the United States. But obviously that just shows that it's got what I call intermestic, foreign policy and domestic policy amalgamated. Right. How do you do? They come together, and that's really what this is.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go real quickly back to the government shutdown, because we have this new poll I want to show you. 45% of voters say Republicans are more to blame than Democrats for this shutdown. So what does this say about how voters are feeling about the White House is handling itself, national politics in general, and the blame that might be placed on both parties as we get closer and closer to the midterm elections?
Well, it's obviously a plurality, but I think the Democrats are winning the public relations war on this, which gives them impetus to continue the fight for continuing the Obamacare health care subsidies. Obamacare is very unpopular in 2010. Today, it is very popular, and I think the Democrats know this, and I think that they want the president to kind of propitiate them, to basically to acquiesce to their demands, and they can take that as a win, and then go to 2026 and say, look, this is what we've done. And you can see even moderate liberal Democrats can go back to their constituencies and say, this is what we've accomplished. I think the Democrats really believe that they're going to win here, and they think that the president in some form is going to fold.
Yeah, as that blame percentage number continues to increase, so does the pressure on that political party to actually reach across the aisle and strike a deal. Okay, Rich Rubino, thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right.